Uncalled Empath Show.
All right, guys. Do I have a show for you on this Elite series? My next guest is Christine Ramos. She's a maternal child health registered nurse. And you know, when you come across somebody and you just completely connect with them for the first time. I've never met her previously before we recorded, and instantly, like empath to empath, we connected. And there's so many things that we're going to cover today. If you're an empath or a highly sensitive person, you definitely don't want to miss this episode, because we are going to be talking about how to connect with your spirit of your child, importance of knowing the children as spirit, the imprints of previous lives, plus a lot more very fascinating stuff that I don't think I've covered in hundreds of episodes. I think you guys are going to get a lot out of it. Christine, welcome, and it's an honor to have you.
Thank you, Raj. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, and as far as the connection, we both have a lot of things in common that we spoke about before this podcast, and I'm just really happy the universe has brought me to you. A lot of the stuff that you did say did help me in my personal life, and in this episode, I want you to kind of help the thousands of people that are listening, the empaths, the highly sensitive people. But before we move forward, can you tell the audience a little bit more about your background? I know you're board certified. You worked in nursing for a long time. You have a lot of different backgrounds. You are a physical and emotional, cognitive, intuitive empath. I can go on and on, but I'll let you kind of explain everything.
Okay, so professionally, I first started out my first career was in social work. And I worked with people who had mental health and substance abuse challenges. And that was in the mid to late 80s into the 90s. So I did a decade of social work. After that, after I had my second child, I kind of fell in love with the whole idea of helping mothers and babies. So I took the step to become a nurse. I did an accelerated nursing program, which I almost thought I was going to lose my mind, because I did 69 credits in 1 year. Wow. And I got my nursing degree, and after doing a little bit of work in cardiology, because, you know, as a new nurse, you have to start out and doing, you know, like the basics. Then I specialized in maternal child health. Once I started getting into that field, and I became pregnant with my third daughter, and my third child, and she was a girl. And I started to feel like, you know, there's something missing in just the works that are available, the written works, the literature, the educational material that's out there for people who want to look at the profound spirituality of bringing new life into this world. Okay. You know, you have your books like What to Expect When You're Expecting, which is the usual book that we, you know, people who are pregnant, you know, couples go to learn about pregnancy, childbirth. And there was nothing out there that said, you know, oh my gosh, I'm bringing this soul into this world, you know, and since I have a background in doing hands-on healing, the type that I do is called therapeutic touch. And also because I am an intuitive empath, I can actually sense people's the human energy field. So when I started to apply all of those things together, coupled with my background in social work, so we have the mental health aspect, and then I have the maternal child health, the physical aspect, I got around to creating this book that addressed how to bring up a child, mind, body, and spirit. And so the book goes into such things as how to apply the truths of the chakras in raising children. So you have the 7 chakras for any, for your audience that doesn't know, you have the 7 chakras, which are the energy centers of the human body. You have the root chakra, which deals with issues of safety and security. So these are all things that are applied to the upbringing of the child. You have the sacrum chakra, which deals with one-on-one relationships and how important it is to provide a role model and education for your child on how important it is to honor those one-on-one relationships. The sacrum, after the sacrum, you have the solar plexus, and the solar plexus deals with everything that has to do with issues of self-esteem and self-worth. So think about how difficult that is for children growing up these days, right? You have social media, and you have the, people who go on social media show their ideal life, which really is not based in truth, right? We all know that. Everybody puts on social media this beautiful life that they have without problems. They have beautiful bodies. So
Yeah.
our children are growing up with issues of self-worth, self-image, and that has to do with the solar plexus chakra. After the solar plexus, we look at the heart chakra. So what is that? How could we apply the truths in that particular chakra for our children? Well, that has to do with issues of love and forgiveness. So think about the importance of that in teaching our children that not only do we need to learn how to forgive others, but also forgive ourselves. And so after that, we have the throat chakra, which has to do with expression and will, and just how important it is that your child feels like they're being heard, right? And you have your brow chakra, which is right there in the brow, right between the eyebrows. And that has to do with clarity and insight and cognitive processes. So again, it's important to teach your child how, insight into, their own souls, how they are eternal beings. And the last chakra has to do with the crown, and the crown is everything that has to do with your connection to a higher being or your higher consciousness. So these are all things that go through in the book in terms of applying the truths of the chakras to your own child or to a child that is in your life. It doesn't have to be your own child. Like you could be a teacher or a coach. And these are important in terms of bringing out the very best in, these are the next generation, basically. So that's just one aspect of the book.
Wow. I mean, I have so many questions, and this is very fascinating stuff. Being an empath myself, I'm always interested in, spirituality, energies. And I do know that, personally, like when I'm around people that have low vibration, or they're negative or toxic, I start to feel it myself. And I start to get, believe it or not, pain in my body, on my skin, stomach issues. And yeah, maybe it's a little anxiety as well, but my body's trying to tell me something. So I can imagine for children, when they're in that infant stage and they're going through the growth stage, if they're with somebody who is not a good role model, or they're going through maybe a divorce and they may seem like happy and they're playful, but really there's certain subtle things you can look at, which is going to play a role when they get into adulthood. So I wanted to ask you, how is the spiritual energy, how can they affect children, even from a young age into adult age, if you could kind of explain that.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up. It's the children are exceptionally sensitive to spiritual energies. Okay. From the moment that they're born, they are so sensitive because you think about it, a baby, all of their senses are not yet acute. They're not yet sharpened. Okay. So what they basically receive the information, how they receive the information of their environment is through the sensations of energy. They read people's energies. And I'm sure you've heard, and I'm sure your audience has heard, how children, all usually up till the age of about 8 or 9 years old, they actually can remember, they could have communication with spirits. They can, some of them even remember past lives or snippets of past lives. So this is a very important time of the child's life when they are exceptionally sensitive to spiritual energies. So having said that, if you see your child, be uncomfortable around somebody, or if you see them suddenly be very clingy to you, that's a clue to tell you that, it may not necessarily be that they're being so-called, that kind of stranger anxiety. It could very well be that they're sensing the person's energy, and something about that person's energy isn't comfortable for them.
Yes.
Okay. And it doesn't even have to be necessarily that this person is evil or has bad intention. It could simply be that the child doesn't resonate well with this person. And I'm sure you and your audience has had, cases where they're around somebody and they just don't feel right, or they feel drained, or they feel, maybe even overly excited or overly, stimulated. These are all things, these are all ways that the child shows, hey, I don't feel comfortable. I'm gonna hang around you as my primary caretaker, just to feel better. Okay, because everybody, as you know in your audience, we all have our spiritual energy field. And for a child, a young child, that your spiritual energy field is their haven, is their safe haven, so to say. So when a child is feeling uncomfortable, or the child is feeling very or unsafe, or just, this could be, like I said before, just a simple issue of not resonating with somebody, the child will likely go to the primary caregiver and just kind of hang around them. And that's their way of, this is my safe haven, I feel better here. And, and unfortunately, you might see parents, they'll get frustrated and, stop clinging by me and everything.
Right.
But it's actually something that they're doing to feel safer.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point, because I think that's where codependency kind of starts at a young age. And then as that child grows up, it shows up in their relationships with people, bosses, loved ones, and even if they get married, I mean, it shows within the people that they marry, so all this comes out. So I wanted to pivot here and kind of talk to you a little bit about previous lives, because I just get really fascinated by this. And so wondering if you can kind of enlighten us. I mean, do you really think, because there's a lot of skeptics out there, I understand that, but there's got to be something more. And I think empaths and highly sensitive people are very in tune to this part. So I think a lot of people that are tuning in are waiting for this, for your answer for this. But what is your etheric imprints from previous lives? Can you explain that and how all that works?
Sure. Yes. there's not a lot that you know, the basic the general population. There are so many works done by professionals, doctors, researchers on topics that people might consider paranormal or supernatural
Yeah.
or something like that.
Woo woo, you know.
Woo woo, perfect. Yes, woo woo. And one in particular that I love and I always go back to is a book. It's actually more than a book. It's a whole series of works by Dr. Ian Stevenson, who was a psychiatrist. I say was because sadly he passed away. And Dr. Jim Tucker, some of your audience might be familiar with that name. Dr. Jim Tucker took over his work. But Dr. Ian Stevenson, in 1997, wrote a book that's called where reincarnation and biology intersect. And with that, he studied over many years children who have had past life memories. And these children, some of them, what he found was that they would have some type of birthmark, scar, or just some type of marking on their skin, which seemed to have corresponded with the manner in which they passed away.
That's
okay,
crazy.
fascinating stuff.
Wow.
Okay, and I highly recommend the book. It's where reincarnation and biology intersect by Dr. Ian Stevenson. And he has case after case after case. And now this isn't something as simple as a child saying, oh, I remember how I died, I had a sport fight, or, I was killed by a pistol or whatever. It's not as simple as that. He goes and he actually takes the steps to corroborate all of these stories to the point to as far into this as collecting the people who this child might say is a family member from the past life and corroborating their stories. So let's say the child says, oh, this person in this village over here, that was my sister in my past life. Well, this doctor would get the people who this child says was in his life. And yes, he would only document the cases that lined up and sort of the evidence showed that this child is telling the truth, because how else would he know?
Yeah.
How else would he know that the sister's name is such and such, mother's name was such and such, this is how I died, this is the person who killed me, this is the. And so how I bring that back to the book is when you learn the spiritual energy of an individual, you have layers of the spiritual energy. So the first layer that's corresponds, that's closest to the physical body, is called the etheric layer. And the etheric layer is the layer that provides the blueprint onto which the developing fetus, the cells, kind of just start to divide, okay, when the woman is pregnant. So that etheric layer has the imprint of previous lives. And so when a child has, say, a birthmark or some type of scar, or some type of, it could even be some type of anomaly, a congenital anomaly, which means something that they're born with. It could actually be called, it could very well be that this is something that is carried forth from another life. And so these are the things that I researched and put together, doing a lot of research into Dr. Ian Stevenson's work and applying that to pregnancy and childbirth. So that's part of the book and how I
That's
get into that.
that's crazy stuff. I mean, I get so fascinated because there is something there. There's been actually on Netflix. There was actually, I think, a story where a boy was born, and he was talking about, I think, how he, they were showing him pictures of a man that
Yes,
maybe was a pilot, if memory serves me correctly. So somehow they connected with the family, and he was able to say detailed stuff to it. So it just gave me chills that just because we can't see anything in this physical realm doesn't
yeah,
mean it doesn't exist. And just the possibility that there might be something on the other side. And that's why when I do my coaching, I tell people, like, there is people, or there is angels, there are people that are well wishers, maybe there are people that passed away. There is always people on your side, and they don't leave your side
mm,
just because you can't see them. But if you look closely, like, look, you look at the time, you look at, maybe you see the same license plate, or you see, like, something over and
yes,
over, like numbers, or you see something in the sky that resembles something, which I've witnessed myself with a passing pet. I've actually had
yes,
pictures of clouds. I mean, call me crazy or whatnot, but I personally believe that there is something on the other side. However, it takes belief, and sometimes we can't see them with our physical, in the physical realm, but there's definitely something there. And I think a lot of empaths that are tuning in, and HSPs, they can
yes.
contest to that, because I've talked to a lot of my clients that I coach, and they say that they can feel, other things. I mean, they're not clairvoyant or anything, but they say that they feel like they're not alone. I mean, even when I had to put my pet down, the veterinarian said, okay, I'll give you, 10-15 minutes to say goodbye. And so when my dog was in my arms, it left
Mm.
physically, like it left. I felt like it, when something leaves, like a spirit leaves,
Oh,
like I
yes.
felt it leaving out of my arms, and I just kind of looked in the room. I just don't feel like I was alone. Like, I mean, that's just me.
Oh,
And
yes. No, I mean,
but
well, obviously, I agree with you. Absolutely. I mean, for people who are sensitive, that life energy is tangible.
yeah,
I mean, it's tangible. You could feel it. When I was working in the hospitals, um, I would know when somebody is going to pass soon.
wow,
And yeah, without any kind of outward signs, meaning like, that the vital signs were stable, but it's something, it almost felt as if the spirit was separating from the body. And for people who are empaths, or people who are intuitive empaths, they can sense that.
yeah,
They can sense that separation. So yeah, I mean, what you were sensing is very real.
yeah. I'll never forget it, and it is a very painful process. But I'm also thankful, like, I had the opportunity to learn from that, and just know that I'm
Yeah.
not alone. So just kind of switching gears here, because I know there are a lot of people that have children, or they'd like to have children in the future.
Hmm.
Um, do you think, in your opinion and everything that you went through, do you think parents are chosen by the soul of their child? Like, how does
Absolutely.
that work?
Well, think about it. What is the most intense and powerful relationship a person will ever have? It's probably parent and child,
Yeah,
right? That's the most intense, because it shapes who you are. Uh, for the child, it's you know that's the basis of you know life for you. For the parent, there is no greater love. Um, so that relationship will give that spirit the most opportunity for growth. So that's how I approach it in terms of first of all, spirit. Every soul incarnates with what people term like a soul group, right? And it's a group of spirits who are basically on the same level in terms of their evolution and growth. And with that soul group, for one life, a person in that soul group could be a sibling. In another life, it could be a wife or husband, or an uncle, a grandmother. When it comes to parent and child, it's the most powerful. So yes, I wholeheartedly believe that you will know your child, okay, in terms of a spiritual bond. This is definitely a spirit or a soul who you have shared other lifetimes with, undoubtedly. So when it comes to a spirit choosing their parent, that's something where that child or that parent is having the opportunity for the most spiritual progression, spiritual growth, spiritual development, just by virtue of that strong bond. So think about it. I don't think you have children, correct? If I remember.
No.
You don't have children, right? Okay. So for people who are already parents, and depending on how old your child is, you think about the different challenges they bring to your life, right? And yes, depending on how you deal with them, and depending on the type of role model you could be for your child, this is like ground level testing stuff. And again, it's just a relationship that can give you the most opportunity.
Yeah.
So yes, to answer your question, that's a long-winded answer for yes, absolutely. Your child and you've known each other, you've chosen each other, and you're going to grow with each other.
I've always wondered this, and I'm sure I speak for a lot of people that are listening, but what if someone's out there and they're like, I didn't choose to be abused. I didn't choose to have, but what I tell them, and you tell me if I'm incorrect, but I say, yes, you did choose them, because if, in order for you to get enlightened and go through that scenario where you're basically suffering and you've overcome it, now you've learned your lesson. And I do feel that we agree to it. Yes. And when I say we, I'm talking about people that come into this realm, and then we have to endure so much pain, suffering, heartache to finally get to a point. And I'm living proof in front of you that I went through hell myself. And I think we had a very candid conversation before this. And that's why I connected with you so easily, because you knew right away, you read my energy right away. And I was like, that's crazy how you know all this, but you already knew that I went through all of this. So what is your take on that? Do you also believe that we consciously believe that, yes, I'm going in and I agree to these terms?
Absolutely. So first off, let me tell you that when I wrote the book, I tried very much to keep it as little woo-woo as possible. And the reason for that was to try to appeal as much as I possibly could have the book appeal to the medical profession. Okay. But I couldn't stay true to the book without including that very topic that you just mentioned. And that is that we all choose the situation that we're born into. This is not something that was random. This is not something that was a punishment,
Right.
or something that, you know, some higher being says, you know what, you you were a naughty person in another life, so now, you know, you have to go through these terrible trials and tribulations. No, this is something that our own higher consciousness chooses to learn and to develop and to progress spiritually. So if you're born into, you know, unfortunately, if you're born into an abusive relationship, or abusive parents, you know, this is all stuff that you knew, you kind of were,
Yeah.
you know,
It's like a
a
contract.
collaborator.
Yeah.
Exactly. You were a collaborator in this
Yeah.
scenario, saying, well, this is what I'm choosing to experience, and how I deal with it, how I come through this is what is
Hmm.
going to help me in
Yes.
terms of realizing spiritual truths
Exactly.
and spiritual enlightenment and you know, progression, evolution, and that spiritual evolution, it all also combines with the collective consciousness. So how you emerge from that, and hopefully, you know, the challenges are met, and you grow from them, and that helps the collective conscious, because remember, we're all connected. Okay, we don't see it with our naked eye, but there are electrons all around us,
Hmm.
and we are all connected with those electrons.
Hmm.
So every action I take, you're going
Hmm.
to be affected. So that in and of itself, the collective consciousness has that growth as
Yeah.
well. So we're all moving towards something, right? And
Yeah.
so I also that's how I also apply it to children,
Hmm.
because, you know, think about how courageous that child is for coming into this world, right? Because let's face it, it's kind of shitty out here sometimes.
It's
All
tough.
right, it's kind of shitty, yeah. So excuse me if I'm just, you know, saying language that you know, you don't
Oh,
want to
you're
hear, but
fine.
um but yeah, so, you know, every time a child is born, it's kind of like, I'm here. We're trying to move things along. We're trying to, you know, move this, you know, these humanitarian issues. We're trying to evolve a bit, and they're part of the new collective
Hmm.
consciousness. So
And that's where,
courageous.
I mean, with COVID and all this stuff that's going on, people think,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, we're divided. There's more hate, there's more stress, and people are basically it's us against them type attitude. But it's not until something big happens on a grand scale where not
Hmm.
just one group of people are affected, we're talking the whole world. This
Right.
disease or this COVID has it basically affected every human being on this planet. And so
Yes.
what is collective telling us? It's like, okay, guys, if you guys don't get along, this is the aftermath. And
Yes.
there's a lot of good things that came out of it. In fact, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have this podcast, which means I wouldn't have met you, and I would
Hmm.
have probably never gotten to where I am. And now I'm so thankful that I went through all the suffering and all this last couple of months. And, with all the new people that I've met, the hundreds of guests, all the clients and everything, that would have been not even possible if I didn't have all that suffering up to, the COVID and then afterwards. So look at the aftermath. And that's the reason I'm
Yes.
mentioning that. It's like a
Hmm.
child being born. They're coming into
Yep.
a very violent world where people are against each other and there's hate, but there's love too. But that child has to figure out how to make it through in a way where they can find their authentic self. And so,
Yes.
yeah, so before wrapping up here, I'd like you to kind of leave us with something that you feel that's very important, because there's a lot of empaths and highly sensitive people that are tuning in. I'm going to let you say the last word on, for somebody that might be maybe on the fences, that maybe you think this is all woo woo, or maybe somebody that's really into what you're saying, but they don't know which direction to go. So I'm going to leave you with the last word here.
Okay. So in terms of what I write in the book, it's basically my effort into helping to usher in the new generations, so to make a better world. Okay. And the way I do that is addressing their souls, knowing your child as spirit and nurturing them as such is so important in terms of helping them to be aligned, like you said, with their most authentic self. And I'm truly believe that once you help a child or anybody, once they realize their authentic selves and they are seated very comfortably in their soul, the potential is endless. It really is, because that's when they know they can accomplish anything. That's when they know that their intention, that the intention they put out into the world and for themselves, the world is going to meet them there. The energies are going to just bolster them, and they're going to be doing what they're meant to do. And ultimately, what they're meant to, what we're all meant to do is love each other. As corny as that might sound, the bottom line is love. And the bottom line is that love is what will help us to evolve, to get us through this hatred, to get us through this division, this divisiveness, this me versus you, and also to take care of our earth, right? Our world is crying out, it's dying. And so it's our children that have to get us out of this, man. We need to move forward. And so that's the whole intention of the book. Help your child, look at your child as spirit, nurture your child as spirit, and you are what's going to emerge is a generation of people who are going to help us get through this.
Yeah. Beautifully said. There's a reason why I had you on here. You are not only just an amazing human being, but you are one of the elite coaches, and well-deserved to be on here. Could you tell us where we can find your book and anything else that you'd like to kind of leave out there so people could find out who Christine Ramos is?
Thank you. The book can be found on Amazon.com. It's also in, other book outlets. You can find me on intuitivenurturing.com or Christine Ramos-RN.com. And yeah, most of my work is writing in parenting, health, and spiritual magazines. I write a lot of articles.
Nice.
But occasionally I will do a private childbirth class or private breastfeeding class. And you can contact me on my website if that's something that's interesting to you. So
awesome.
That's where you can find me.
I'll leave that in the show notes. So you guys definitely check her out. Definitely well worth it. Christine, it's been an honor to have you. I'd love to keep in contact with you and
Same here.
Just see how you've been doing and maybe collab in a live later. But
sure.
Yeah, you really opened my mind on a different realm, because I've been going on like more trauma route, like with a lot of coaches and therapists and doctors, but I feel like you today just kind of more went to the spiritual realm, which was missing in all these elite episodes. So thank you so much. I think the
Well,
universe brought me to you.
thank you. Well, we also want to head off that trauma, right?
Yeah.
So if we can kind of have more insight on how that trauma even occurs in childhood, you know, that's very helpful.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you
Well,
for having me, Raj. It was a pleasure.
absolutely. And you're always welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, guys, stay tuned. We have a lot more episodes coming. Hope you enjoyed this elite series. We have definitely much more. Always keep moving forward and keep going. With that said, we are out.
You're listening to the On Call Empath.